Thank you for that introduction, Mr. Ward. Once again, you listen to What's Up Ward, the podcast. My name is Wardy Ward, and I'll be your cool captain on this fantastic voyage today. So please get in, sit down, buckle up, because it's about to go down. Remember to always hit that like and subscribe button, especially if you're my YouTube listeners out there. This helps us to help you, help us, help everybody. You feel me? One of the things we often say on this podcast is everyone has a story to tell, and we just want to know yours. Well, our guest today definitely falls into this category. This Suave Brothers from Chicago. He attended Dunbar Vocational High School back in the day and then on to Olive Harry College in Chicago as well. He somehow ended up in Indiana. Don't know how or why, but he's here. Ladies and gentlemen, please join me in welcoming Mr. Eric Maxwell to the lab. How you doing, my guy?
How are you, sir? How are you?
I'm doing good. I think I cut my toenails too low, but you know what? That's another story.
It happens.
So Eric, tell us in your own words in your 30-second elevator speech, who is Eric Maxwell?
You know, I'm one that's been through many things in life, but it's always one of those type of things where it's important to keep your head in the right focus. Right. Many times, you know, you have your struggles in life. So you have your, whether it's, you know, financially, whether it's medically, whether it's no matter the situations, it's either you can always allow other people to bring you down, or you feel like you're at that point where you make the adjustments, not always relying on other people to make you move yourself up. Yeah. But you have to do things and make the moves to impress yourself and not everybody else.
Man, that's some deep words right there. You sound like you've been through some stuff, and we looking forward to hearing about that. Well, as I mentioned earlier, I said you're a Chicago native. Were you born? You were born in Chicago?
Yeah, I was born in Chicago, on the South Side. Okay. And as you mentioned, I went to Dunbar High School. I graduated Dunbar High School in '96. The crazy thing about that is 96. During that, back in '96. So I actually went to school with Jennifer Hudson.
What?
When I was a senior, she was a junior. And if you know the stories like with Jennifer, there's like the situation that happened with her family and stuff like that.
Yeah. Somebody got killed. A lot of people got killed.
Yes. Matter of fact, I had class with her sister. Her sister was a senior back when I was a junior. We had class together. So it was, a lot of that stuff, man, when it went down, I mean, it hits close to home, especially when, you've been around that family at the same time that you're proud of Jennifer. It's the disappointment when the crazy stuff like that happens, man. It's just, sad.
Yeah, man. Man. So how much older is she than you again?
I'm only a year older than Jennifer.
Okay. Yeah. Was she singing and stuff back then? And was she known?
Matter of fact, she had like music class, gospel, and you always knew like, oh man, she got a voice, but you never would have thought, the levels that that they can go. And I mean, I'm just so proud of the accomplishments that she brought upon our school. So that's definitely something I keep in my memories.
That is amazing. So, well, tell me this. I want to go back to Chicago a little bit because I actually born over there too. Yeah. And it's so many questions I want to ask you about why you left. But before I want just a few things that I get to. What was it like for you growing up in Chicago?
Well, growing up in the middle of, when I say I was in the hood, I was in the hood. Ooh. I was in the middle of an area. It was like a lot of gangbanging areas, man. It's like when you have an area that they call Lakeside and Tarrytown, it was a lot of gang activity. It was a lot of things that was going on. Now, my mind frame growing up, I was cool with people. So at the same time that I was cool with the ones over here, I mean, I knew what level to keep it at. And, I didn't cross any lines that took it to any nonsense. But from the time of growing up with these guys in grade school to when you get up to the older area, to the high school and stuff like that, and, things get kind of split off amongst people. Yeah. They know who's cool and who was not, especially back in that generation.
So I know how gangs were in LA. But in Chicago, could you not wear the different colors? I know
Yeah,
Bulls turned into
that was a big thing. I mean, that was a huge thing. And at the same time, it was also about to be smart about, wearing your hat straight. You couldn't walk
yeah.
around trying to represent something that you weren't. And,
Mm-hmm.
I can't even lie, man. When I got to high school, you walk around, got my hat tilted to the side. You'll have a guy come up to you, hey, what's going on, G? And shake your hand halfway. You make the mistake and go and shake their hand in a way, or you pull back and say, hey, I'm not. They'll ask you like, why you got your hat turned like that?
Mm-hmm.
Or, or if you go and you shake up with them, where you from?
Mm-hmm.
Don't lie, because you mess around and lie. The words back in the day was like, well, spit the lit. If you didn't know what they were talking about,
Mm-hmm.
oh, you were guaranteed getting punched right in your mouth.
Man.
And trust me, there was many times that I saw it, mistakes that I made. I took a few, but you learn, and you learn very fast. And like I said, I stayed on the south side.
Okay.
My high school that I went to was pretty much closer to the downtown area, but it was also closer to the projects. And the reason why I went to that high school, the main thing that I wanted to try to get into at that time was the architectural program, one of the best architectural programs that was in Chicago. And there was, competitions and stuff like that actually I won jobs from that.
Wow.
That was right after high school, right at that high school stage. What made it hard was that when I went to college, I got my associate's degree in architecture. The bad part of that is that I graduated in 99 and I was paying out of my pocket, and everything switched over to AutoCAD in 2000. So it wasn't as easy as I thought it was going to be with so much of the transition, especially paying out of the pocket. But it was also good to have at least a small degree to say, hey, I got my associate's degree.
Right.
I can take this to so many other different levels.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
And that kind of helped me in a lot of ways.
Definitely. Now, what did your parents do when you were growing? What did they do for a living?
Well, my mom was a nurse. She was long time RN nurse in Chicago. My dad, he was a mechanic. And when I say he worked for Chevy, and when I say the man could fix any vehicle at any time, he was awesome. And he still is awesome. I shouldn't say was, still is. Both of my parents are still alive. It's a blessing for that. They're up in their 80s, and they're up there, but they're still doing good. And actually, they moved here after my son was born. They moved here to Indianapolis. So, it's still a blessing to see them, and still strong in everything that they do.
Now, both your parents were together while you were growing up, correct?
Yes, I had the blessing of that. Yep.
Okay. So since your parents are here, do you still get a chance to get back over to Chicago that much?
Well, I have not. I haven't been there in a while. Usually what I would do is like around the time of the auto shows, I would go almost like every year, go to the auto show. I know so many things have changed. I mean, even my guy that was, the best man at my wedding, he still lives there. We talk on the phone almost every other day. We check up on each other. The crazy thing, my grandfather is still there. Which is also
you don't go see granddad?
Well, I haven't. Which there's no reason why I don't, but that's a whole nother long story. But my grandfather this is the crazy thing. My grandfather got remarried at 90. Okay. So yeah, man. My grandfather got remarried, and for a while, I can't even lie, man. I was a little upset at that because, even though it was a long time that my grandmother had passed, and hey, but if you look at my grandfather, you would never believe that man is at the age that he's at, and
at 90.
Yeah, he got married at 90. I want to say it's he's like 95 now. 95 now. So he's been married for the last 5 years, so he's still getting up there, but man, he's smart as a whip still. So, that's
now he didn't marry. Now if your granddad's 95, he didn't marry a 20-year-old, did he? 25.
No. Actually, now she's like late 80s. You know what I'm saying? And I'm just like, I'm like, man. Yeah, I'm like, bro, I can't see myself redoing it that later in life, but it is what it is.
Especially, dating. Wow, okay, I'm gonna leave that alone.
Yeah, man. Yeah.
So tell me this: when you got out of school, still living in Chicago at this time, I'm assuming. Tell me about the first job you had, because I think Chicago is so interesting, man. It's like, I know it's got like this good pockets, but like I said, when I lived over too, it wasn't the greatest of areas. So I'm like, what did you do for the first job in Chicago?
Well, the crazy thing is, like I said, I had got the internship and got into the architectural program and stuff like that. So my actual first job, it was bought out by FedEx. You probably see the orange trucks on the roadway packaging.
Yes.
So my first job, I was loading trucks for roadway. So
hard.
Yeah, man. So my parents were one that they like, hey, we want you to concentrate. Like during high school, it was concentrate on school. Don't worry about those side jobs. College, it was a whole nother story. By then I'm driving, I can get to my locations. So I was doing that, working for roadway the majority of the time while I was, in college. And then it was kind of like when semesters and stuff changed, time changed in those specific times, I had to do a little bit of adjusting with that. But after like roadway, I moved on, and the best thing that I did, they had like temp agencies. So while I was in school, while I was in college, they had like these little internship ways that you can sign up, you can go through a training and it help you get jobs. So at the same time that opened up, it was like utilize the temp agencies in Chicago. So by being able to do that, I was able to get with big companies, big name companies. And I worked for the hospitals there. Back then it was the name Norwegian American Hospital.
Okay.
And Mercy Hospital. Like I worked at their, and then I started doing billing. So of course I kind of like utilized my, little college degree that I had to get into other things.
Okay.
Which was a great thing, because building that resume, like right now I work full time at Eskenazi Hospital, and I've been there for going on over 12 years, going on 13 years. So it was just, just those small little seeds over that period of time, it just helped build and get experiences.
Yeah. So you definitely didn't want to follow your dad's footsteps into that auto industry?
You know what? Actually, I did. But my dad, he always told me, he was just like, you going to school. My mom was the same way. And at the same time, my dad was teaching me how to do a lot of things. That's how now, I'm able to change brakes now. I'm able to change my own oil. I'm able to do some things of, where you go where you don't even realize rotors and all of that stuff is not that expensive, but you take it to go get it done. They hit you tooth and nail. It was so many things my dad taught me that even though I didn't make it a career, I know how to do it now. Yeah,
I definitely admire that. I've changed my oil a couple of times, and I tried to do the brakes and stuff. It's not that bad, like you say, but people,
right.
I guess it's our laziness, because like other people come to this country can speak multiple languages, we can't. So
most definitely.
I know it's just different things you got to do, man.
Yeah.
So you mentioned that you're currently working at Eskenazi Hospital. That's here in Indianapolis. For 13 years, you said?
Going on 13 years. Yep.
Wow. What advice would you give somebody who was just starting out in your field, the job you do now? What would you tell them about that?
Well, I'll tell you this. When I started off back when it was Wishart. Okay. Even the whole process and how everything was done was a lot harder back then. When I started off, basically I was a registrar. I was registering patients, but I started off doing that in the ER, which it was a little bit more difficult way back then than what I'm doing now. So back then, being in the ER, you saw it all.
Oh yeah.
From the gunshot wounds to the stabbings to the crimes that happen on the street to, I mean, so many vicious things that happen in the world, from ones that had gotten arrested for doing horrible, horrific things, that you have to kind of look beyond that to get what your job is done. Mm-hmm. Even at the times where you have the police outside the door, and being in the position that I had, it would be somebody in the ER that just got shot that's telling their boy right in front of them who did it, how it happened, how everything went down. With me standing there. But legally, I cannot repeat. You feel me? Yeah. So when we had like the officers that step up and they're going to talk to these guys and, you know, these ladies of some of the horrific things that happen, they shrug their shoulders and they say, I don't know. Mm-hmm. I don't know what happened. And I sit there and I have to suck that air in, finish getting everything typed out, you know, and, you know, from the bad things of somebody that may come there and they're laughing and they're joking and they're talking to you. And then you see the red light pop on right after you leave, to see all the doctors run in and then they didn't make it. It was times like that, man, that when I say on a regular, and for so long for me to have done it, I kind of see from a different perspective of why a lot of police are how they are. Because when you get so desensitized by the craziness and the nonsense that you see, it's almost like of a norm. So as quick as something that you saw crazy, you know, 5 minutes later, another one has happened. So after a while, it was like, okay, there's other opportunities, there's other changes that can happen. So after I've learned so much from that, I was able to move on. Still there, still building my stocks and bonds in there.
Yes, sir. Yes,
sir. Also knowing, all right, now I need to adjust.
Yeah. So, yeah, I can imagine that can eventually take a toll on you to constantly be in that environment. You know, like you said, you're breathing that air, so it's got to affect you. So I'm glad you were able to have that experience, but also to keep moving forward.
Most definitely.
What's a typical day like for you now when you go into work?
Well, right now it's a little bit smoother. I work with general surgery and neurology now. And I basically, after they have their appointments, if they need their x-rays, if they need their MRIs, right after they see the doctors, they see me, which is a lot more mellow now, you know. I take it to heart personally because and one of the other things I was going to, you know, we talked about back in December, like I dealt with seizures personally. Wow. Yeah, and that was a struggle that I had all the way from high school. So all the time when I was in Chicago and I was dealing with seizures and stuff like that, the doctors in Chicago could never find where it was coming from. Could never find. Yeah. Well, it wasn't until I got out here in Indianapolis. And to make a long story short, basically I had got into a really bad accident. And it was one of those things that I can definitely say was a blessing that I'm here for sure. And I was seeing a doctor at the time, was over at St. Vincent, and he told me, he was just like, from the test results and all of that stuff, as long as you take your medicine, you're fine. Yeah, no, that wasn't the case at all. And lo and behold, I got off of work on a Friday, a little early, half day. At the time, my parents was out of town. As a matter of fact, I think my wife was out of town too, if I'm not mistaken. It's been a minute, but basically, to make a long story short, no, my wife was in town. My parents was out of town, and I went and I hopped on the highway on the way home. But just before I stopped at this, it was like a little Greek restaurant that was downtown, and I said, well, you know, I always got to keep in mind of what I'm eating, so you know, I'll see what they got. So I got a little sandwich, and on their fries, one of the things that would always trigger my seizures was anything that had paprika in it, because it had MSG, which a lot of that, I didn't know that. Kind of learned that later on. But anything that had like certain seasonings, like MSG, Like I couldn't drink anything that had alcohol in it at all. Like I'll take 2 sips of a beer and I would have a seizure right away. Well, that day I'm like, hey, I'll be fine. I'll grab some fries. I'll head on home. Well, I grabbed that. Something told me, hey, I'm gonna pop 2 fries in my mouth. That was the worst idea I ever had. What I didn't know, they sprinkled paprika all over the fries, and that had MSG in it. Soon after I had it, all I know is I blanked out on I-70. My foot hit the accelerator. I kind of almost went into a semi. They said a semi swerved.
Ooh, my goodness.
And when I say on this one, definitely God took the wheel on this. So literally, because actually to see my car, it's still kind of like not even real. I still got a picture of it, and it just doesn't even seem real. But I missed the semi swerve. And basically they said with the seizure, my foot went right down into the accelerator. I went into the back of a Suburban, and in the back of a Suburban, they have like really huge tire in there. And at the time I had an Impala. So when I went into the back of it, the airbag hit me and basically knocked me out again. Okay. So my foot, which was kind of a good thing, my foot came off the accelerator. So all I know, I got down a lot further. And why I say, I swear, man, God took the wheel on that. Because if you look at I-70, there is no side railings.
Right.
I pretty much rolled, like I was probably about 15, it rolled that far. It got all the way down by like Shadeland. And right down there is where there was side railings.
There they are.
I feel this little bumping. I feel this little bumping, side bumping. And like I started coming to, the airbag had already deflated and went down. And then like everything's coming to me. I'm still kind of, mine is not there, a little lethargic, hit my brakes. The Suburban pulled behind me. And I'm still in my work uniform, and I stepped out. I'm looking at, the front of it. The whole front is smashed in. How thing was still rolling, I have no idea. And, of course, I went and checked on a lady. She was, like I said, because of the Suburban and the impact on the big spare tire in the back, that kind of took all the pressure. So, she was fine, and they took me right back to work, took me to the ER. The ambulance came, they took me right back to the hospital. And when they ran everything on me, because I didn't even know they had ran all of these tests on me. But they said the 2 things that they saw was the food that I ate, and there was a diet pill that I was taking. So they pretty much told me, they said the best way to say is that they kind of said, well, you know what? We're going to say to you that this pretty much happened from what you took and what you ate, that you had a reaction to it. But don't go back to driving. And I said, no worries. I won't. So it was a good thing that like my license wasn't suspended and stuff like that. But at that point, I was just like, okay, this is kind of a struggle. But no, I'm not about to, injure anybody else, or from that, for me to be walking after seeing my own vehicle, that was a pretty much of a wake-up call. Like, yeah, bro, you need to get it together. So and from that, to make a long story short, I switched my doctors. I was seeing a doctor over at IU Methodist, and he told me, he said, one of the things that I want you to do, because we're going to be running these tests, those week-long EEGs and MRIs and all of those, all of these crazy tests, do what is going to make you have a seizure. So that makes sense, and a lot of people don't know. So that's one thing that I always, even from the job that I do, like I will tell people my personal experience of when they have those tests and stuff like that, and because it gets very depressing, and I know I'm kind of bundling a lot of that together, but one of the things that I always tell a lot of people is do the research on your medication. Please do your research. Yeah. because when I say you feel very depressed when you have the medication I was taking, it literally tells you when you do your research, your suicidal thoughts, you have those feelings where it's like everybody hates you, that, you know, and you're trying and you're trying and you're trying hard. And it's like you're angry from the time you wake up. And it was hard because I know like my attitude, and like I said, me and my wife, we've been married for 19 years. So it was so much my wife had to deal with and nonsense, you know, that, you know, even like there was so many apologies, especially after I had, you know, after the doctors were able to find it and I had my brain surgery, you know, it was like I didn't know who I was, you know. Because, you know, when you feel like something else is making you, you know, moody, or you feel a certain type of way, you know, it's kind of like, okay, now something that I've dealt with all the way since high school. And now, you know, at that time, I'm like 35 years old, 36 years old. It's like, man, am I the person who I thought I was? Am I the same person? So it's just a lot of things that I learned and a lot of adjustments that I had to make that, you know, that was a struggle.
Oh, yeah. I appreciate you saying about the suicidal thoughts and explaining some of the thoughts, because I've always heard people say suicidal thoughts, but I never knew what that meant. And you just said like somebody hates me or this and that. So I appreciate you telling me that. Now, you mentioned you had brain surgery.
Yes.
That's a powerful, scary stuff. So did you things and told you this is the next step in evolution?
I'm sorry, I kind of lost you a little bit there.
Yeah, I was saying you said you had the brain surgery, and I'm saying what led to that? Was that after the car accident?
Yeah, so basically it was like after I had that car accident and stuff like that, and I went in for those tests. You know, like I said, my doctor basically told me, he said, whatever you know that's going to trigger your seizures, that's what I want you to do when you're at the hospital. So what I did was I told my wife, I said, do me a favor. I want you to go back to that restaurant. I want you to buy me the exact same thing that I bought, that I ate that day. One of the other things that I definitely knew that triggers my seizures is if I had anything with alcohol in it. So what I did to prepare from the week before, I went dead cold on my medicines. Wasn't taking nothing for the whole week before I went in for that test. By then, because when you think about it, when you go into a hospital and the food that they give you, there is no preservatives, there is no seasonings, there's nothing that was going to trigger it. So by my doctor telling me that, and I also knew, hey, if I have a very small shot of this little bourbon, it's going to happen. So it was kind of like a little plan that I told my wife. I said, listen, I want you to spike a Sprite for me and buy that same meal. And like I said, I went in there dead cold from my medicine, you know, for a whole week. Now, I don't suggest that, you know, to everybody else or to anybody else. But lo and behold, the first day that I was in there, I did that. I ate that food and I, you know, had that drink. And let's just say I had the worst seizure ever. So all I know is when I woke up the next morning, I had an IV in me. I had like, you know, the nurses and everybody was like surrounding my bed, and they're like, okay, so what we're going to do is we're going to have you the rest of tomorrow. We're going to be letting you go home. And I'm kind of confused. I'm like, this is only the second day that I'm here, and I'm supposed to be here this whole week. Like, what are y'all talking about?
What's going on here?
You know, like, so they said, well, you know, this basically what it was that was a great time. They were able to find out where it was coming from.
Okay.
So any of the other times that I would go there and I had those tests, there was absolutely nothing that I was eating or drinking, or basically they kind of start weaning you off your medicine. It might be the day that I leave after that 5 days, I come home and have a seizure when I get home, you know, right after lunch. So I'm like, man, if I would have had this yesterday, they would have been able to see it. Yeah. When you're in a relaxed state in the hospital, you're chilling in the bed, you got the TV on, you're able to chill, you got food that has nothing bad in it, and you had your medication. Nothing was triggering it. As soon as I walk out the door, this is when I had it. So, lo and behold, so they told me, they said, you have what they call a lesionectomy, which was basically like a knot in one area. It was right close to my temple area, right on my left temporal lobe. From that, I want to say one or two things. It was either from maybe altercations, fights that I had back in the day, or, I used to always kind of get out there and play football and stuff like that. Unless, basically it was a blow that I took to the head. And from that was where that developed. So after, I had my brain surgery, basically it was almost like having a laptop that got a virus. Once they wiped that whole laptop out, it's like a brand new laptop.
Rebooted you.
Yeah. So it was the reset button. So after I had my brain surgery, literally it was a lot of things that, it took a little while because they would come in and say, hey, do you know what hospital you're at? And I'm sitting there like,
yeah, like, I don't know.
I don't know. It's like, do you know your name of the doctor? Nah. What's your name? He was like, I may have known my name, but it's like, so it was like a slow development and over a period of time. And, I appreciate, so much my wife is because it was, like I said, it was a struggle, man. Because during that time at the hospital, I wasn't the nicest person, because you're not who you feel that you are,
right?
And she was by my side. My parents, they were by my side. I had so many friends that came and saw me, so you kind of start realizing how much appreciation, maybe not at that time, but you kind of look back and, you just appreciate, the people, you appreciate your friends. Unfortunately, one of my friends, Malcolm Hudson, he passed a couple weeks ago. Yeah, he passed a couple weeks ago. And I just remember during that time, just going through rough times at the hospital, and I look up and, and he's standing at the door, and he was the man, my boy, he was in tears, came in, just, gave me a hug, and he was just like, brother, you're going to make it through this. And, it was a struggle, for both of us, but, it was just more motivation to have close people and family, true family that looked out for me.
Yeah.
Man, that love will never go away.
Yeah. I can definitely see it in your face, that love, man. That's a good feeling there. And before I ask you about how you met your wife, I want to ask you this. What does a seizure feel like? What does that feel like? Do you know? Are you aware of it?
Yeah, definitely. So basically, have you ever had that feeling like you went to a spot that you've never been before? And it's almost like that deja vu feeling.
Yes.
And darn well, like you could be overseas in darn Italy, a place that you had never been before. And then it's kind of like you feel it like, okay, this is weird. Like I've seen this before. That's almost the way that when that seizure feeling is coming on, how it would feel. And basically with mine, I would completely like blank out. Like my eyes would still be open. And my wife would always say like, it would sound like I was sipping my teeth. Like I was trying to remember what I was going to say, but couldn't. And I would I would blank out. My eyes was wide open, blank out. And then after it would go through its process, then it's like it's coming back, and I was very lethargic, man. It was, do you know where you're at? And it's like I knew, like I wanted to say, but it like wouldn't come out, and I'm just like, and then I would just be so tired and zonked out. And after a while, go to sleep and come back, and then, then it'll be fine. So, it's so many times, like I've interacted with people because, one of the things that I do as well, I do, not only do I work for the hospital, but I also work security as well. So I work for the Pacers, and I also work for the security company with the Pacers during the game. So games and concerts and stuff like that, I work that side. So there are many times that people that have dealt with seizures, a lot of people around don't know, unless you've gone through it yourself. You pretty much know, what's going to happen, because like as quick as a person would drop and have a seizure, 5-10 minutes later, they are cool. And they'd be like, hey, I'm good. I'll stay for the rest of the show. And a lot of people are like, what is this? Like, are you serious? Is that for real?
Yeah.
And it's like, yeah, until you actually had that. Yeah, that it's kind of, so basically the best way of explaining it is like our brains is like electrodes going through our head. Like,
okay. Yeah.
So it's kind of like when it wants to go through that one area, there's that blockage. So it's going, and then it's like, uh-oh, wait a minute, can't get through. And that's when it reflects to us. And then we, have that seizure. And then it kind of goes back into that process. So you have some that it may be once a month. There are some, depending on the medication. Some medications kind of keep it even and keep it going. Mm-hmm. Sometimes, it wasn't. Because mine, it was not helping at all.
Yeah.
So,
I think a lot of people take a Depakote for that. Depakote C, sprinkles, stuff like that.
You have like Tegretol, Lamictal, Depakote. It's so many different ones.
Yeah.
And that's one of the reasons why I tell a lot of people to know what they're taking, because you'll have some like, yes, it works, but at the same time, when you're, going through the depression, you feeling. And there's so many times, like I've had this conversation with ones that has come, like they're like, man, finally somebody knows what I'm talking about. Like, man, my neurologist is looking at me like, what are you talking about? Like, I don't get it. But it's like, I'm not higher on that level, but I can say from a personal experience, I know what you're dealing with. I know what you're going through.
Yeah, absolutely.
But always, like I say, I know my bounds not to cross, but But one thing that I always tell people to do is definitely do your research.
After you had the brain surgery, are you still taking medicine now? Or are you okay?
No. So after I had my brain surgery, it was like 3 to 6 months in. They ran tests and stuff like that, and they were like, man, everything is going good. And they wanted to keep me on one of my medicines. And then they, of course, it's like you have to go a full year without having, but I also knew the medication that I was on, how it was making me feel. One of the things that when they say that you start dealing with those anxiety attacks and stuff like that, I had it when I was dealing with my seizures. But when I say it was 10 times worse after I was getting weaned off my medicine, man, I'm talking about like, and of course, like the jobs that I do, I'm saying, I'm around people all day long, even big crowds. So it was like times I went to Sam's Club, man. It was doing shopping with the wife, and then it was just like so many people was packed up in there, and it was like almost like I was losing my air. I was losing my breathing, and I was like, I gotta go, I gotta go. So it's kind of to know, where that's coming from, and of course everything kind of adjusts. So yeah, I kind of went dead.
Okay. Yeah. So I understand how it is too, man. Because when you're in a room like that, I don't like going to Sam's either. So
yeah. So yeah, like I said, man, that anxiety feeling would kick in, and over a period of time, I was just like, you know what, I'm done. I don't have to take this stuff anymore. I am just going to see where it goes. So when my full year was passed, of course, they continuously test you to make sure, everything is on point. So when everything came back cleared, I told them, I said, I pretty much stopped taking that a while ago. And because basically it wasn't helping anything, but it was just one of those ones that said, hey, well, we'll just see if you still have it. This will help you. But so now like I said, I've gone through this level of nothing, no more seizures, no more, off all medications. So now it's kind of like the doors is open for me to do what I love to do. So,
I'm glad, man. You're doing real good, because that's got to be a heavy thing on you. So, and to be able to work multiple jobs and still deal with that, that's awesome. I'm proud of you, man.
I appreciate it.
So now you were playing basketball a lot too.
Yeah.
We used to before or after.
That was way before. That was way before. And pretty much what happened when I stopped playing ball, because I remember I was running the gym every Friday. A little freak accident happened. Playing, running down the court, went the wrong way, tore my meniscus, and I had tore my meniscus, and that's pretty much when I stopped running the gym. So it was like, every once in a while I might get around out there and shoot around, for fun. But now it's more focused on, going to the gym, getting my exercise, still hitting the treadmill, still getting from where I was before. And that was one of the things that was a struggle, because even back in the day when I was out there hooping, I was pushing like 323, 330. Really? I didn't look it, but I knew I was.
No, not at all.
So like now, since my brain surgery and just a lot of things of focusing on exercise and stuff like that, I've come way down, and I'm not even in that 300 stage anymore, which I never plan on ever going back to even close to it. But it's just trying to stay focused and getting healthy, and and I gotta hang on the same level with my son. My son is 16, so he's taller than me. I'm like, man, there was the time when I was still grabbing him and throwing him on my shoulders. I can't quite. Yeah. Well, I still care, but I ain't gonna be walking after I do it. So so it's still trying to keep up on that level.
Okay. Yeah. Once again, you're listening to What's Up Award, the podcast. We're talking to Mr. Eric Maxwell out of Indianapolis, Indiana. Eric, my next question I want to ask you is, you mentioned your wife and how she stood by you and been there all these years, and 19 years of veteranness for you of being married.
Yes.
How did you meet the lovely Mrs. Maxwell? How did that come about?
Well, this is the funny thing. So when I was in Chicago, it was, again, back in the days of Chicago, man, Friday was my hooping day. Period. Like I was gonna be balling on Fridays, and there was a close friend of the family said, "Hey, listen, I know you write poetry, and we're gonna be going to this little poetry reading place. We got some friends from Indianapolis is coming to Chicago. Definitely you got to come and you got to hang out with us." So I'm like, all right, I'm gonna hang out with the balling this week, and I'm gonna go. Ooh. So I get to this poetry club, right? So I get there and they're not there. They hadn't even got there. So they said we're gonna do they said we're gonna do open mic. So I'm looking around. I'm like, well, I brought my poetry because all right. So they like, well, who wants to open up? So I said, well, you know what? I'm gonna go ahead and open up, because if I stink, either nobody's gonna know me and I'm out of here, or they're gonna like what I did. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So
logic.
Yeah. So they invited me up. I did my poetry and they loved it. They was like, hit us with another one. They loved that one. Hey, hit us with another one. Lo and behold, they had gotten there. So when the crowd was into it, my poetry was up there. It was kind of like one of those vibes that, it was just like, okay, then it was everybody got together like right after that. And it was just, when I saw her, I was just like, oh man, she's gorgeous. Where's she from? Yeah. Mm-hmm. Well, come to find out, because back then, like when I say I was super shy, man, I guess I looked at myself like, man, I don't have a chance with that. I wouldn't even try it, honestly. Well, okay. Lo and behold, her girl lied to me. Yeah, which is not a bad thing, because it worked out. Yeah. But yeah, she didn't. She basically told me, she said, well, my girl, she kind of checking you out. And I said, really? Okay, well, that. So I, introduced myself, and I'm just gonna be a gentleman like I'm gonna be, and we kind of clicked off. We clicked off right there, and we talked and we hung out all that Friday evening. We all hung out. And it's just so crazy how so many things happened so tight together, because I was supposed to hang out with them again on that Saturday. And this is kind of crazy how I end up and how I remember this, because the next day, the Saturday morning, we had got a call. My uncle passed away. He had a heart attack. Oh, man. And it's kind of craziness with that story as well. Because if I'm ever say if it's a way that I want to go out, it will be the way my uncle went out. Yeah, I know. So that sounds nuts, but so he was a diabetic. My uncle was a diabetic. And I can say it and laugh about it now because it's been years and years and years and years ago. But he took Viagra. So he was kind of doing his thing, and in the end was the end. So his heart stopped on him, and they rushed him to the hospital. So that day was kind of like with them in the family, and he stayed on life support for some days, and the family and everybody was there at the hospital, and unfortunately he passed. And then just from the group that I hung out with Friday, it was like, hey, we are going to go out. We're going to, do a little brunch before they go back, to Indy. And I ended up hooking up with all of them. And we went to breakfast, and I was just like, okay, I can't let her leave without at least me getting this number before she goes. So it was kind of one of those, hey, well, how long does it take before you get back? Yeah, about 2.5 hours. So yeah, I waited 2.5 hours and called just to say, hey, I just wanted to double check and make sure you got back to Indy. And
all smooth.
Yeah. So from there, it was like we just got to talking. And one thing that I appreciated about her, she kept it real with me. She told me from the jump, she was just like, hey, just, I was married before. At the time, her daughter was about 3-4 at the time. And at that time, I mean, I didn't care about that. You know what I'm saying? Yeah, it was, So what I appreciated, like I said, from up front to know what I was coming in contact with. So from there was like talking every day and, communicating. And sometimes I was coming out to Indy and she would come out to Chicago, and lo and behold, it wasn't until like I finally told her, hey, I was really nervous. I was like, when I saw you, I thought you was just gorgeous, and I didn't think I would even have a chance. And when I told her why I did it, she was just like, well, I'm kind of glad things worked out, because I didn't tell her. I didn't tell her that. So I was just like, oh, okay. Well, yeah, I'm kind of glad it worked out. So we talked for a while, and then it was like when we made it official that we were dating, about 6 months in, I proposed to her. I proposed to her, and I we had the wedding the following year, so we were still even though we were engaged, we were still in that dating range, so it was just kind of still getting to know each other even better. So I moved up after we got married. It was June 7th of 2003, and moved out here to Indianapolis. And like I said, it's just
that's how you ended up in Nap.
That's how I ended up in Nap, because I literally she kind of told me, she was just like, because of her being married before, her daughter is here, and I was just like, me transitioning to come here is not a problem. Me making a change, I wouldn't take your daughter away from her father, at all. I would not interfere. And I didn't have any kids. All I was doing was moving from Chicago to Indy. So,
Well, I'm sure it's not that hard to give up all that snow, but
yeah, you're right.
Yeah, lake effect ain't no joke.
Right. Yeah, exactly.
So you said your wife had a small child. Yeah. How did having kids change your life?
Well, it was new for me, because that was a responsibility that all I can think of and know was how my parents raised me. It was definitely a blessing that I had, parents that they were strict on me. They would, my mom is from Trinidad. My dad is from Selma, Alabama. So some things it's like, okay, you're not going to boldface, say some story to me and we're not going to believe it. So it wasn't the easiest thing, but I also respected my stepdaughter, because she didn't, after we were married, she never came at me like, well, you're not my dad,
Yeah.
But I also had to know, I also had to learn and know my boundaries to not to cross. And I know there was so many times, we had our falling outs and stuff like that. But the respect and the things that you learned, I have to say it was definitely a blessing, because now she's 26. She's a mom. She's married. And, I'm a grandpa, so it was so many things. Yeah, so many things that, that you learn, even from young as a teenager myself, same thing with her. So many things that she has learned that, she builds and she inculcates in her own family from what, we all gone through. It was never easy, but
no.
In to be at the state where you're at now and we're at now, everybody has their battles, but when you're still standing strong now, man, that's been more of a blessing. Like I said, it's crazy because me and my sister is 10 years apart. Now my son and her are 10 years apart. You know what I'm saying? Yeah. So there's so many things that you learn, and they've learned.
Yes.
And, and me, like I said, we've been married 19 years and I'm still learning.
Yeah.
And that's that's basically the one thing, that you can always just fall back on.
I like how you said that you're just still learning, because you can know somebody 50, 60 years and you still won't know everything about them because you're never going to be a mind reader.
Right.
So I see your wisdom coming through when you said we, meaning she's still learning, you still learn her. A lot of people I find not where you are. So I'm learning from you right now. So brother, that's what you know.
I appreciate that.
Out there. So now I'm gonna move to this final section of the show called Getting to Know You. Well, you've given us so much already, but this is just a fun section I like to get to talk to people about.
Yeah, for sure.
First thing is, my people told me that back in the days you met the brat tat tat tat. Is that true?
Yes, I did. Actually, if I went down the list of how many people that I've met from not only the brat, and actually this was what was so crazy about that with the brat. Remember, the brat is from Chicago.
Yes, yeah.
So when I was in high school, I was in the talent show. Okay.
Really?
Yeah, I was in the talent. So back then I was rapping. And like I said, like right now, I'm all into my poetry. I'm big into my poetry. But back then I was into the rap game, you know what I'm saying? I ain't gonna say I was good, but I was with guys that was great. And actually I have some friends that's out there in the industry right now that's doing big things. That as a friend, they brought me aboard with that. So back in high school at Dunbar, we had the brat was coming to perform at Dunbar, you know what I'm saying? So it was like, to have the opportunity when I was younger, and I met her then. And then it's like because of the work that I do now with the security and stuff like that, I've gotten close with different promoters that's here. And I got a chance to go see the brat. And, lo and behold, it was just like, yeah, you can, let me get a picture with her. You know what I'm saying? So I, got a picture with her. Very nice person. Very nice person. The picture don't say it as, because she has to be, being her in her pictures, but, was a very nice person, man. Like I said, the list goes on from the shows that I've worked, that goes from Post Malone to Elton John, to, even being the escort, at a game for Reggie Miller and Edgerrin James and Reggie Wayne. Like so many of these guys that I've met them so many times that when they see my face, they know who I am. So it kind of like tripped out, so it's kind of, I say what's up to them. They're like, hey, what's going on? You shaking hands with them and people kind of looking at me like, bro, how did you?
Hey, who are you?
I'm like, bro, that's an icon. It's like, man, it's all about the work, It's all about the work. And they appreciate ones that do things and they're not trying to ask for anything for what you're doing, that you're just doing, what you're supposed to be doing.
Right. Yeah. I agree totally.
Yeah.
All right. My next question is, what advice would you give young people who were contemplating marriage? What would you tell them? young people.
The one thing that I will say, one thing, and especially that I hear so many times, check your expectations, what you're looking for. Okay. One thing I'm going to say to guys is don't be who you're not. What I mean by that, at the same time, you know, because I've heard, man, so many of your shows, and, you know, they want to, hey, we're going to go to the most expensive restaurants, or we're going to go do this, and we're going to go do that. You know, and after a while, these ladies is like, okay, for my first date, we going to the Bahamas. And, you know, a brother's sitting there looking like, oh, see, I was just trying to do that because, nah, bro, don't do it just to try to, life ain't a talent show. Because after the show is over, you know, it's going to be expectations. So be who you are. Stop doing things to try to make people, you know, accept something that you're not.
Yes, I like that. Next question is, I know you're into poetry, and I'm sure you've probably seen Love Jones before.
Yeah.
What did you think about Lorenz Tate's version of Brother to the Night? What did you think about that?
I mean, I want to say the man was he was on point. He was on point, you know. He was on point, but you know, that's the best way I can say it. He was on point.
Okay. Yeah. I know they shot that 3 times, and then they ended up going with the first take of it.
Yeah.
So I know he didn't write it. Another dude wrote it, and he was like, "Hey man, I can't say it like that." But when you writing your own stuff, I know you kind of feel it.
Yeah.
So. Oh yeah.
Okay. I mean, if you want me to drop you one, you let me know.
After I get through my question, I'm gonna have you drop.
Oh man, okay.
Just give us a step on that.
Oh yeah.
But next question: give me your Mount Rushmore of basketball. What news we putting up there?
Well, I would say, you know, Mike is gonna be up there. Period. Kobe will be right next to him.
My God.
Even though the man is not done. I give credit where credit is due. LeBron is going to be up there. You know what I'm saying? It's so many things that those 3 right there have accomplished. And they did it on their own. They weren't doing it because and I see how a lot of people kind of they get mad at the LeBron thing, like, oh man, and why did he leave Miami? Why did he go to Cleveland? Why did he go back? Being around the NBA industry is a business, you know, and
exactly
it's a straight up business. One of the guys, like I said, that was, you know, that has played, you know, even here, you know, Malcolm Brogdon was a guy that I actually had met and was one of the nicest guys. Sometimes you see that they're there for a reason, you know, and there's a lot of guys that has a career. And I even learned that on the flip side, outside of the NBA, on the WNBA side, I actually met the commissioner, Kathy Engelbert. She's the commissioner of the WNBA. And she had came and she sat down, and I had the honor to be the escort for her. And she went in with the team, and just some of the communication that she kind of gave them to let them know it's a career that's there that so much opens up different ways. Yes. It goes beyond the person that paid $30, $40 to sit courtside. It goes a lot further than that, because with a career personally, you go out there, and we've seen so many great players go out there and they snap a knee. If you know the history of, like in Chicago, Kevin Garnett and Ronnie Fields, those are 2 guys that went to, you talking about when Ronnie Fields was one of the most dominant players over Kevin Garnett. This was back in the day when they was talking about Ronnie was going to be number 1, Kevin was going to be number 2. Same 2 dudes coming out of the same high school.
Crazy.
Unfortunate, so many stories with that. You know, a bad accident happened. That kind of deterred him down. At the time in his high school days, his education wasn't good at all. So because of the levels that it was at there, the opportunities kind of went away to where you would have just jumped from the hood to the $1 million club.
Mhm.
When you don't take and not able to get to that next level, that kind of can just destroy your whole career.
True. But you still got one more person to put on that Rushmore. Westbrook, is that him? Reggie Miller?
Yeah. I mean, yes, and and I just think when all the stuff happened, man, when Reggie was here, that last year, man, I can almost like taste a championship here, in Indy.
Talking about the fight when the fight went down.
Yeah,
that was a year.
Yeah.
I'm surprised you can like the Pacers if you're from Chicago.
Well,
to be a conflict of interest.
To work for the company now, I absolutely love the Pacers now. But at that time, back in the day, because that's kind of just like with Mike. If you lived in Chicago, you hated Jordan. Majority of my family on my dad's side was in Detroit. They hated Jordan.
I know everybody did, yo.
Yeah. But and it was kind of like at the same time where I could not stand Dennis Rodman to even see his face.
Me either. Yeah.
But when he came to Chicago, that's the man. That's the A.
Yeah, he did. When he came to Chicago, he changed. I mean, they have his picture up on a billboard somewhere up there, and traffic would stand up every day because they was changing his hair color on the poster. I was like, it's crazy. That was a traveling rock. I've never seen that. I know people love the Golden State Warriors, but when Chicago was playing, that was a traveling rock group, man. That was unreal.
Most definitely.
Yeah.
Most definitely. But great history, though.
Two things on that. I went to school when Sean Kemp came into the league, and you were talking about Ronnie Fields. Yeah. Sean Kemp wasn't the smartest candle either, but I'm gonna leave that alone. Yeah, but
right,
yeah, it was a guy that played with him. I forget his name. He was from South Bend, and this dude was better than Sean Kemp. And he fell asleep at the wheel one night, drunk, and killed himself. This dude dunked over 10 people once. It was crazy. But anyway, when you played basketball, what NBA player would you say your game was kind of like when you was at your heyday?
Man, that's a good question. I was one of those dudes, man. It was like I was always the big boy on the court. It was kind of like, okay, you're not gonna respect my game, but I'm gonna get over in this corner and I'm gonna hit these threes every single time.
You got a jump shot. Yeah.
It's kind of it was times like that. So it was one of those. I could say, if you want to say one of those Craig Hodges, that it's like, okay, don't worry about my game, ignore me,
You want that,
but when I'm over in the corner and I'm hitting these shots, it's like, okay, you're gonna respect my game, So it was just, for me, it was more of just the fun times, man, and my main focus, because when I came here in Indianapolis, it was like there was not really like a lot of go. It was never like Chicago. Chicago was like every weekend, every Friday, every Saturday, you were going somewhere. You were kicking it with this one. You were kicking it with that one. Here in Indy, it was so many homebodies. And I was just like, yo, this is a struggle. It was a struggle for me. So it was like, all right, let's try to get as many guys together. Let's get together. Older groups, younger groups. It's not about, trying to get out there to see, hey, who got the best handles, who's who's the AA player that's about to go to college. Like, nah, it was, hey, let's get the older cat that's 56 over there that still got his hook shot from half court that would drain it every time, just to get out there and have great fun.
Yeah, that's nice. I'm glad you did that because people need that. So I was, if I had to
we
say
need it again.
Yeah. I think your game, to me, you kind of remind me of Draymond Green because you did whatever needed to be done. You kept the team together. Hey man, get you a spot. You yell at this person you got to, and you pick at me. So I think you were like the glue. So I always appreciated that.
Oh man, I appreciate that.
Yes, sir. Last question in this round is who is somebody that you always kind of looked up to? Somebody who just like, this guy is like a mentor to me, if there was any such person for you.
The one thing that I can say, it was a combination of actually my parents. And
Nice.
I say it big time with my mom and dad. You know, like my mom being a foreigner from Trinidad, my dad, him being from Alabama. There were so many things that they went through in their era.
Yes.
Don't be discouraged by other people's ignorance.
Mm.
Don't feel like somebody can come at you in a way so ignorant, like even at a job, being there for 12, 13 years. Like there was times that I was in areas that, how do you go from employee of the month 1 minute to when they want to make a little transition and change, and
Yes.
want their people in that, you know, all right, let's see what we can do to get him out of here.
Mhm.
So I am going to take that and I'm going to say, I'm going to keep doing my job. I'm going to let your ignorance keep running your mouth. I'm going to let the ignorance, but I'm also keep a note that's going to cover my own tail.
Right.
So,
That's smart.
you know,
Yep.
because like I had been in situations that because of me doing that is why I'm still there and they're not. You know, that's not, you know, saying that in an arrogant way, but the
Yes.
failures that they tried to come at me with, they're no longer there, you know.
Mhm.
So
Yes.
I take that and I say, you know, and I thank my parents for training me that, because at the same time, you know, that my mom went through her struggles, because like me, like a lot of people don't know, I got a sister 10 years older than me, and she was
Mhm.
she was a knucklehead back in the day, you know. And it was a lot of things that when she was doing things that wasn't about the right, I kind of learned from that nonsense. And at the same time, the same struggles that other people can come and say things at my parents, either you're gonna run away from it or you're gonna
Mhm.
say, "Who said I was going anywhere?"
Right.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that hey, nah. And it was like, don't run from the ignorance. You can make a
Mhm.
transition, you know, you can better yourself, but
Yep.
nah, don't have anybody else. And it took me a long time to understand that, because in a heartbeat, man, I'd be ready to go, you know, and run the opposite direction. But
Yep.
from
Yep.
learning that from my parents, and like my dad, he, you know, like I said, Selma, Alabama, from out in the country living that they had, to where when you needed to go to the restroom, you had to run down the field to get out to the restroom. You
Mhm.
know, when it was, how are you going
Yeah.
to eat? And well, you see that cow over there? Yeah, you know what I'm
Make
saying?
it happen.
Yeah,
Make it
you know what
happen.
I'm saying? You know,
Mhm.
so it was so many things that the younger generation now, you know, it wasn't that, hey, Eric, I see you got Jordans on. Yeah, I got my Jordans now because I have worked my butt off for it. Back then, it was just like, boy, you in school. If you want to, you buy it yourself.
There
We
you
ain't
go.
buying that for you. You
Yes.
know, it
Uh-huh.
wasn't to, life wasn't about trying to put an impression on other people. And that goes from the younger generation now, even moving up into adulthood. Life is not going to hand you anything. You better work
Right.
for it.
Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah. I heard someone say the other day that they felt that Harriet Tubman let people down because she didn't do enough. And kind of in harmony with what you're saying, I think our parents and people like Harriet Tubman did do that. They took the ball down the field.
Yep.
And then it's up to us to do more with it now based on what they got to stack on top of that and keep doing.
Absolutely.
You just can't say, well, mom, you ain't give me this, you ain't give me that. No,
Right.
mom kept them lights on.
Yep.
Mom kept you off the streets.
Right.
Dad was getting an example, you know. So
Yeah.
I think sometimes we got to realize, hey, we got some responsibility in this too.
Yeah.
So I'm glad you giving your parents that shout out,
Yeah,
man.
man. I mean, I very much appreciate them.
Yeah. Okay, Eric, we're at the close of the show, so it's time for you to bless us with some of that poetry before we wrap this up. You ready to hit us with something?
Yeah, I hit you with this one, man. It's and many of my friends, they've heard it. It's called The Strongest Man.
Mm.
Um, so I'll break it down. Many times throughout life, so many tears have flowed. It's like my life's a game being played on the hardest road. Many times I look in the mirror and ask why me, and my reflection looks at me and sees the same things that I see. I dig down deep in the folds of my soul to figure out why this road is so cold. I don't know. Should I walk the road or carry the load, or should I take every punch and never fold? Should I ride the bench in the game? Should I ride the bench in the game of life and never get in? Or tell the opposition to kick rocks if you think I'm just trying to fit in? See, I've been my own man from the start. It's when I looked into my own eyes and saw the strength in my heart. I will walk that road. I will carry that load. I will fight that fight, and I will break that mold. I will be the man that you can't be, and I'll still be the vision that you can't see. So look at my eyes and see the sight, and you'll see the man with the strongest fight. You know, in life, it said you reap what you sow. It also said you never forget what you know. It said what doesn't kill you only makes you stronger. But I don't feel no power trying to hold my breath longer. I try to walk the right path and do what I'm supposed to. But when I try to advance, all of a sudden nobody knows you. I may fall, but I get up and dust off. I may run every race and true, some have lost. But I never give up because I'm only one man. And besides, who made your robe white in the blood of the Lamb? You ain't perfect and neither am I, because when you talk out of term, it usually turns to lies. So basically, word of advice, live your life, because the strongest man lives the strongest life. So that was just one, my man.
Yeah, I feel you. That was good stuff right there.
I appreciate it.
Now you wrote that from some from the happen, because that sounded like that was personal.
Well, that was just basically life, period. You know,
Okay.
It was just so many different aspects of things, of self-adjustment, some things of, always worrying. And that's one of the biggest downfalls, like I said, that I used to have, to worry about what other people would say or do for me to make an adjustment.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not living for you. If I'm not bettering myself, if I'm not strong for my family, if I'm not taking the steps to build my son,
mm-hmm.
If I'm not showing by example, I can care less about another person's opinion, especially if that's, deterring me to better myself. Mm-hmm. So, those were just points that, from so long of nonsense that, that I definitely wallowed in with that.
Definitely. That's some nice stuff there. Well, ladies and gentlemen, we're at the close of the show. Again, we've been talking to Mr. Eric Maxwell today, and we thank you for blessing us with your presence today. Before we end, and before I say my final thoughts, is there anything you want to clear up or touch on that we didn't get to say during this podcast?
Man, the one thing I want to say is that I definitely appreciate this opportunity. It's with everything with this, the pandemic is pretty much coming to an end, with all the stuff with COVID and all of that. The one thing that I can say is there was so many people that has lost loved ones, so I just say, man, we don't forget when we have them now. Don't wait until they're gone before we show the appreciation for the people that we love. Thanks. And like I said, man, it's been a lot of curveballs that I've had. I lost my boy. He was very close. There was those times where, when you had the hard times at home, my buddy that was here that I'm gonna hit up, and he's like, even the times when I couldn't drive, hey man, I'm on my way. I'll come get you. Mm-hmm. So sometimes what I want to just say to everybody is appreciate who has your back. Yes. Don't live your life to impress other people. If you can't impress yourself, do the things that's going to make you happy. Mm-hmm. And keep your focus on not relying on other people.
Absolutely.
And that's just my viewpoint on life, period.
I like that. Let's keep the main thing the main thing. Okay, I'm going to give my final thoughts. Again, everybody has a story to tell, and we thank Mr. Eric Maxwell for sharing his story. Until next time, I just want to tell everybody that if we can get one person to open up their mouth, then we can get somebody else to open up their mind. We thank Eric for sharing his story about his powerful journey that he went through, even the surgery he had, the good times of meeting his wife, to his granddad getting married again at 90. So much stuff we learned from this man. I know you guys are going to listen to this podcast over and over again. Eric, is there anywhere, if somebody want to follow you or see your social footprints, can they find you on Facebook or somewhere?
Yeah, look me up, Eric Maxwell. I got my face on there. You'll see that I work at Eskenazi and I work for the Pacers. So you'll know you got the right one.
All right, everybody. Until next time, you've been listening to What's Up Award. We'll see y'all and have a good one. Peace.